When searching for criminal intent in Trump's actions surrounding January 6th, well, you don't need to look that far. At least that's what my next guest argues. Ryan Goodman, along with MSNBC's Barbara McQuaid and Norm Eisen, writes in the Washington Post that Trump's efforts to change the election through vigilante justice are criminal, regardless of what Trump actually believed at the time. Quote, even if the lawyers were confident that Trump thought he won and could prove his state of mind in court, it would surely not have cured their misgivings about the illicit methods, nor should it. Trump's state of mind in that regard is irrelevant. And Ryan Goodman joins me now. He is a former special counsel at the Department of Defense. He's currently a law professor at New York University and co-editor-in-chief at Justice Security. Ryan, welcome. Walk me through, sir, your reasoning here about Trump's state of mind and why it's not relevant when discussing his criminal efforts.
Sure. So the idea here is that there are several federal crimes that would apply to his actions and some state crimes, especially in Georgia, that the element of the crime is not dependent upon whether or not he thought he actually won the election or prosecutors being able to prove anything about it. You know, just to give you an example, 850 people have now been charged by the Justice Department for being involved in the riot and the insurrection. And it doesn't matter that 850 of them might have thought Trump won, you know, so it's not something that prosecutors are struggling over, because there are federal crimes like corruptly obstructing the congressional proceedings that would apply regardless. You're not allowed to do things like sic a mob on the Capitol. You're not allowed to do things like forge documents in 7 states with these false alternative electors. There's just certain methods you can't take into your own hands. So we kind of walk through some of these federal crimes, and very importantly, Georgia as well, to show that this is actually how the law works, and it's not going to be that hard for prosecutors.
So help me get this squared up. If everyone is telling you no, don't do it, can't do it, and you do it anyway, doesn't that kind of throw the whole mens rea argument out the door?
So that is the mens rea that would need to be proved, for example, in the corruptly obstructing Congress by pressuring Mike Pence. So all that they would need to prove in that instance is that the president knew that it was illegal. And we now have dynamite testimony from Greg Jacob, the general counsel to Vice President Pence, saying that Trump was told by his own counsel, the only person like left on earth who thought that it was legal, actually then says on January 4th to President Trump, it's not legal. And he goes ahead with it anyway. And we also have an email between Jacob and Eastman on the afternoon of January 6th, in which Jacob says to Eastman, did you advise the president that Pence did not have this authority? And Eastman replies, he was so advised, but once he gets something in his head, it's hard to get him to change course. That's pretty powerful evidence. That's the kind of mens rea that you'd want for that crime. But as you can see in that crime, it doesn't matter. Even if Trump said, yeah, but I thought I won, that's why I pressured Pence to violate his duties. That just wouldn't even be something that the defense counsel would want to raise during the trial.
Yeah, you actually, in your piece, you argue that, quote, the most recent hearings of the January 6th committee provide plenty of evidence to prove that Trump and a cadre of his closest associates conspired to engage in electoral vigilantism. Can you break that down for us? What does that mean when you say that?
Yeah, so what we basically mean is, even if you think Trump somehow was detached from reality and thought that he won, he's engaging in actions trying to take the law into his own hands in a way that the law doesn't permit. So let's just think about the 7 battleground states that Biden clearly won. And in those states, on December 14th, Trump and Giuliani have organized these false electors, people who say in these declarations, we are the duly authorized electors and we call our state for Trump, and they submit it to the National Archives in order to gum up the works on January 6th, in order to have that be the predicate for Pence to throw the election to Trump. You can't forge documents. Like, even if you thought you won, you can't forge documents. And that's another version of obstruction. There's also federal law on, submitting false statements and forged documents to the National Archives. So that's partly what we mean by a form of electoral vigilantism, that even if you think you're the victim, you can't take the law into your own hands.
So let's talk a little bit more broadly about the January 6th hearings. We've heard, excuse me, from the committee over and over again that Trump was told there was no legal basis to overturn the election, and yet he pushed on. He persisted. Is this the right kind of argument for the committee to be making?
I think so. I think that they've got a very strong case. And at a minimum, it's enough of a threshold that they've met that you would think you'd have to, at the Justice Department, open up a robust criminal investigation. You know, it exceeds that line by tenfold. You know, the big question is, does it get you actually all the way to the point of enough evidence that the prosecutors would feel that they're confident in pursuing an indictment? But I do think that they've amassed an enormous amount of evidence in that regard, that Trump was told it was illegal and he pursued it anyway. And then that's, you know, some of the good, you know, better lawyers on the Trump campaign peeled off. Like, you know, we have 3 lawyers on the record who said that they didn't want to participate whatsoever, for example, in the fake electors scheme.
Ryan Goodman, thank you very much. Appreciate you. Still ahead, inside the work that activists have been doing for months and in some cases years to prepare for the overturning of Roe versus Wade.